Hey, hey, hey. How's everybody doing out there on this lovely, cold Tuesday evening? This is the Overtime Sports Show, episode number 10. Back at it again. My name is Greg Gross. My co-host is Dan O'Brien. Dan, how we doing?
Oh, we're doing awesome. Doing really well. It's cold yet today. I think I might have brought the coldness down with me from Alexandria, Washington D.C. It was cold up there, and flew in last night at 12:30. Woke up this morning and it was mid 50s. That's what it was up there. So I might have brought it with me, unfortunately.
I like it. It's a nice little change of pace. Us fellas down here in South Florida. Well, I'm in South Florida. You're in North, but it's always warm. So I'll embrace a little bit of cold weather. It finally feels like the seasons.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. A nice, nice bourbon, nice hot weather. Hot tub and some fireplace. That'd be right, rocking and rolling, man.
Love it. I've been in mine, man. Now's the time for it. But we got a great show for everybody. We got a whole slate of sports talk to get to, like we usually do. We're gonna change things up a little bit this week instead of leading off with some NFL action like we usually do. Want to get to some NHL action. Dan, you mentioned your trip up in Washington D.C. for the holidays. I know you got to see a game in person, which is always awesome. We talked a few episodes ago about our own personal experiences in stadiums and things like that. So I want to hear all about it. We haven't had a chance really to talk too much. So tell the listeners, man, how was it?
So first of all, without further ado, everybody loves to see the old hat selection.
Yep.
So
Yep.
boy on. As you can see, it says Washington
Nice.
Hockey, and then on the
Like it.
side, it's got the Washington Capitals logo, and then the NHL crest. So really,
I
really
like
cool hat. Chris Dolan, who was on a couple weeks ago, he let me know that this is actually the locker room hat that they wear. So
it. Okay.
I think that's pretty cool with saying Washington Hockey. But yeah, like we spoke last episode, went to a Washington Capitals game against the Edmonton Oilers, and we've talked multiple times about the Oilers, how they've been a disappointment, and they have all that talent, but they were. I know that you told that they released their goalie, and they were 6-12 or 5-12 going into the game that I saw, and Washington was they were 9-4, 9-5. But just starting off with the game I went to, first of all, Capital One Arena, it is a top-notch arena. And what I mean by that is people, our fans who listen to us, they watch hockey. I mean, it's a light show in itself. They do some really, really cool stuff. The atmosphere comes they call him the Capital slap shot. He comes in, the Capital mascot. He brings in a light like he's carrying a torch, and then he puts it down to the ice, and then it just goes and it looks like mazes, like it's going underneath the looking like the movie Looking for the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights. So it's really, really cool. And then he goes to the center of the ice and he drops down a piece of paper, and then all of a sudden the Declaration of Independence blows up, and you're seeing the whole thing where it says, we are the people, we the people, everything like that. So that's super cool.
Wow.
And our seats were upper deck, but second level or second row. So there was only one seat in front of us, one row in front of us. And what they do, I kind of mentioned it to you, each four corners, they have jumbotrons. So the people up in the upper deck can see the jumbotron actually from it. So it's really, really cool. And it was just a really cool environment. There was close to a sellout. I want to say it was 18,154 around there, something around that. And just a really cool atmosphere. They wore their select jerseys with the blue jerseys with the white. I mean, with the white W and the three stars on top of them, the red stars. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but those are really cool. So
Yeah.
it was just a really cool experience. And then the game came, and I don't know if anybody saw, but Edmonton won 5-0. They were 3 for 4 in the power play. Connor McDavid had 4 assists. Draisaitl had 2 goals. Evander Kane had a goal, and Nugent Hopkins had a goal. And just watching them live and in color, it makes me think, why have they been so crappy all year? So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I know you mentioned that they got rid of their goalie, but they just, a lot of people were saying they had no defense, and you're kind of the closet hockey fan, not the closet, but the hockey fan that knows all the stats. I mean, they just looked like a top-notch team, and it was very surprising to me that they were playing so crappy, and then they come out and win 5-0. Then the next day they play on Saturday or Sunday and they win 8-2. So the last 2 games they've won 13-2, outscored their opponents, and McDavid's had a goal and 8 assists. So it's pretty mind-blowing to think that they've been playing so crappy and then they just looked so good the last 2 games. So maybe there could have been a kick in the butt and making it happen. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Just reading and watching.
Yeah, to me, I mean, Edmonton's been a bit of surprise the way they started so slow this year. Obviously, they're trying to hold people accountable, putting their goalie out there, giving them the pink slip. To me, you got to make some moves. So I don't think it was the wrong thing to do. But when you look at the rest of their roster, they're loaded with talent. Goal scoring is not generally the problem, but I think the league has shown us the past decade or so that teams can get by without top 5 goalie in the league. Those guys are harder and harder to come by. You look at Vasilevsky, Shesterkin, Sorokin on your team, the Islanders. There's a couple guys who are going to be able to bail out your defense. They're going to give you a chance to be in every game, every night. But they are hard to come by. And like I said, there's teams that have proven that you can do it without those goalies. The Avalanche are a good example a couple of years ago. Even Vegas last year, they won with Adin Hill. He came in, I think, in relief. He wasn't even their starter throughout most of the season. So I don't think you can make that excuse if you're Edmonton. A lot of teams would like to, but I think it just puts further emphasis on guys like McDavid and Draisaitl to continue to carry that team. And obviously their defense bears responsibility as well. McDavid was out for a little bit this season so far too. He was hurt, I think, for a couple games. So I'm sure that makes an impact. Any team losing their captain, especially McDavid, who is, I don't even think it's really up for debate. He's still the consensus best player in the league. So you lose that guy, it's going to have a ripple effect. But I really think it's up to the rest of the team to prove that they can not even just, win a cup, but honestly make a deep playoff run. They really even haven't had a deep run, at least not consistently in quite some time. So goaltending is probably one of the issues, but I don't think it's the only issue. But there's still a lot of time left. I wouldn't completely write them off. You obviously got to see them live and what they can do and how dangerous they can be. And again, a shutout, you saw a shutout. So maybe they're already on track to, fix some of their defense and goaltending woes. Time will tell. But I wouldn't write them off just yet.
Yeah, it was really exciting. I mean, they had goalie Stuart Skinner. I mean, he had the shutout, and then he had 2 goals the next game. So maybe they are turning it around. And I mean, with that lineup, I mean, I think they have Nugent Hopkins, Evander Kane, McDavid, and Draisaitl on lines 1 and 2. That's pretty formidable to play with. And like I said, they brought the pressure. I mean, 3 out of 4 on power play. That's pretty impressive, no matter who you are. But it was really impressive to watch them play. And it just sucks because the Capitals are having a good year, and I think they went down 3-0 after the first period. TJ Oshie, he got a bad hit, and I think he's been out the last couple of games. He had an upper injury. Yeah, you know how hockey is; they don't really tell you much, but it was an upper injury, and he went off the ice. But it was just really disappointing because it was Black Friday. It was a 3:00 game. A lot of the fans were getting restless because it looked like they were very lackadaisical after they went down 3-0, and I mean, Ovechkin was out there, but you could say Ovechkin was getting pissed. You could tell because he was, slap shotting just the ball in the end, and he, So it was. But all in all, really cool experience. Really, really cool arena. They do a good job out there.
What was it like? I'm curious. Like, I've been by the arena. I've never been in it, but this was many moons ago when I drove by. I briefly remember. But what was the experience like on game day? How did you guys get to the arena, and was there a lot to do around there? Was there bars and restaurants nearby that you could go to before the game or after the game? Or was that something that you guys did or enjoyed?
So we took an Uber from Alexandria to DC. It was about a 15-minute ride with traffic. So it was really, really close. The game started at 3. We got there around 2:30, and it's in the middle of Chinatown. So there's not too many bars per se. So we just walked in. Obviously I went in and got my hat, and then we went to see warm-ups because we got there at like 2:30, 2:45. So we were there right in time to watch the warm-ups, which is really cool because you get to see all the players come out. And then obviously Ovechkin without wearing the helmet, that's iconic. He always comes out without wearing a helmet, which I think is risky, but also pretty cool at the same time. Yeah. But just like I mentioned earlier, I mean, just the light show that they do, the whole up to the game, they have a really cool stuff. I mean, like I said, they had the 4 monitors in each corner, and then the other side of the monitor, it says on the ice for the Capitals, and it'll show you who's on the ice. So, if you don't know the numbers or if you can't see the numbers, you can look up and see. And another cool stat is it has a running tracker of how much time they've been on the ice. So that was really cool to see how much time they've been on the ice. And you can see, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, the full game, 18 to 20 minutes was Ovechkin. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. There's a lot of teams that have some interesting pregame theatrics. A lot of people have seen what Vegas has done when they came into the league a couple years ago, especially for what that city is. They're naturally all about the theatrics and whatnot, but they have a pretty cool show with the night that comes down. The Devils have a nice one, which I think is probably similar to the Flames. They, both obviously have some fire in their name and whatnot, but they have a cool kind of flame intro. The Lightning obviously have a great one with the Tesla coils, but what you've described sounds pretty awesome. I mean, I'm a history buff. I like learning
you would
about
appreciate
the
it.
history of this nation, and the fact that they could mix in the Declaration of Independence into their intro is, I think, pretty cool homage to the city. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, they did a really good job. And obviously their mascot is like a capital, looks like a president, and they call him Slapshot, so which is pretty cool. So
Yeah.
they do a good job. And like I said, it was pretty much a full house. I mean, it was a premium game because it was Black Friday, but still, I believe that they pack them pretty well. They've been a pretty good team for a couple of years now. And
they have. People are always going to want to see Ovechkin. He's going to be a natural draw for people, and especially as he's getting older. Who knows how much longer he's really going to play? Could be a year,
exactly.
Could be 2, but people are going to want to see him. Especially as he closes in on that goal record. Plus, they're a big city, so I'd imagine like you said, they've been a good team for a little while. I would expect it to be, a pretty good crowd, especially around the holidays. People may have some time off, so that's cool that you got to see a full building. And certainly, it always kind of sucks when you don't get to stand up and cheer, and celebrate a goal, even though you don't have a dog in the fight. Obviously, you're just going there impartial to see two teams and experience a good game. At least you got to see quite a few goals, even if the home team didn't score. But it always does kind of deflate the atmosphere just a little bit, if the home team is getting shut out and blanked. But it sounds like it was still a pretty good time. So that's really cool. I'm surprised you got to get the hat that you have, which it's really cool. I like the way it looks. But if that's truly the official team hat, the one they wear in the locker room and for press conferences, that's even cooler. But I'm just surprised because I've heard, at least for other teams, I've wanted to get the Devils ones for quite a while, and I've heard that it's really, really hard. Like, I don't even think that they're available to the public to buy. They're not on sale. You almost have to know somebody, like an equipment manager or something, to get your hands on those things. Yeah, but maybe it's different for every team. I don't know, but that's really cool. I think if you got one, that's the official team hat.
Yeah, that's what Chris was saying, and I think he would know, with the Panthers. So he said, "Oh, that's the locker room hat. We got to get you a Panthers one." That was his next comment. So I said, "Well, hey, make it happen. We're not scared. We're not worried."
Yeah. That's awesome. There's while we're on the subject of hockey, we'll spend some time on this before we eventually move into football or something else. But definitely had some thoughts. The one thing I learned between last week and this week. Didn't know it was coming, but apparently the NHL changed a rule per se where the road teams had to wear white helmets to match their white jerseys. And I know this because the Devils played a game last week where they were on the road. I believe it was Wednesday after we did our last show before Thanksgiving, and they played the Red Wings. So they were on the road wearing their white jerseys. And after this new rule, instead of wearing white helmets, they opted to go with black helmets. And
interesting.
I'll tell you, I've only seen it so far the one time. I don't think they've been on the road or worn them since, but it looks odd. It just looks weird and kind of awkward. And a couple people have described it a few different ways. And I think the best way to describe it is that it almost looks like a beer league game, or to me, it almost even looks like a European game where if you look at the leagues that are over in Europe, they obviously have the ads all over their jerseys, and it's just pretty disgusting in my opinion. But I think they're less coordinated when it comes to their jerseys, their colors, their style. And that's what the black helmets looked like to me. It just really looked weird. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just old. Maybe it takes some getting used to. And maybe it'll look different for other teams. I don't know, but I was not a fan. And I don't know if you heard about this or if you've seen it yet. The Islanders might have it coming too. I mean, picture you guys. In fact, another thing I wanted to bring up, I was going to surprise you, but I opted not to because we're getting our butts kicked already. But this is a rare moment where we do our podcast once a week, and the Islanders and the Devils are playing each other tonight.
Oh yeah,
And
I got it up right now.
I was going to surprise you with my jersey, but we do this show a little bit later in the evening, and we're already down 2 goals. So I'm eating a little crow. I decided not to break it out. But just imagine you guys right now, you look at the Islanders tonight, white jerseys, white helmets. Imagine white jerseys, blue helmets, or
yeah, that's weird. I'm looking at some videos right now, and yeah, they got the white on white. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. See if you can pull it up and just Google image Devils road black helmets or something. It'll probably come up. And just tell me what you think. I didn't like it. Nothing major to complain about, obviously, but sometimes the NHL is not alone in this, but why can't people just leave well enough alone? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I just hope they don't bring it back.
Let's see
if you can find it.
Road black helmets. Oh, I see it. Yeah, the black with the little devil in the top corner.
Yeah. So are they wearing their white jerseys?
Let me see. I just typed in black helmets, but
white
this one right here has got your boy PK Subban black on red. It was black on white.
Yeah, it's got to be black helmets on white.
Okay.
I'll show you another time, and maybe in fact next week we can bring it up on the screen here and show folks so they can see what we're talking about. But yeah, I just thought it was odd.
I got it right here. I don't like that. It looks weird, like beer league. Yeah.
And you know what's even funnier is when you're watching the game and it's obviously fast paced, it looks like every player is not wearing a helmet and just has black hair as they're skating.
Yeah.
It just looks like they're all not wearing a helmet and just black hair, which is just weird. So I wasn't a fan, but yeah, keep an eye out for your Islanders later this season or someone else, and I'm sure it'll stick out like a sore thumb to you.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there's we stay on the topic of the NHL a little bit here. I'm just looking at the standings. We talked about it a little bit last week, and how I was just really, really impressed with the Bruins. They're still sitting atop the standings. Still just one regulation loss. They've had a couple losses in the last few days, actually, since we've done our show, but they're still sitting there. They've got 2 games in hand on both Vegas and Vancouver. So they're sitting alone. They're perfect on home ice right now, 7-0-1. They don't look like they have a lot of weaknesses. And I think we also talked about this last week, but every week that goes by, I keep hoping that they're going to drop and falter. But the Rangers, they actually have a game in hand on Boston. They're only 4 points behind them. So those 2 teams have looked like the powerhouses so far this season. Obviously, as we talked about, with the Oilers and other teams, there's still a lot of games left. We're barely, a little more than a quarter through the season, getting up to like the first third. Some teams have already dealt with injuries, but the Bruins look like far and away the best team. I'm kind of curious. Obviously, they got blanked the game you went to, but I mean, do you see the Caps? When you look at their roster and the players you saw on the ice, do you see them being in contention for a playoff spot? Because they started off shaky and then they had a really good run, and it looks like they're kind of middle of the pack right now. So I'm kind of curious your thoughts, if you think based on their roster, if they're going to be sticking around come playoff time.
I think it really depends on TJ Oshie. I mean, he's an anchor for that team. He really keeps the team together, I believe. And actually, Nicholas Backstrom, he's been out, I believe, all year. He wasn't in the game when I saw him, and he's been around a while, but he's also an anchor for the team. So they got a good team. They got some young guys. Their goalie, this guy, the guy who played Christian Lindgren, I believe his name is. He gave up a lot of goals, obviously 5 goals, and I mean they got an old team, a young team, but I think they should be okay because Ovechkin, he's a good player. I mean, once he gets going, he can carry the team. So yeah, I would see them. They're probably gonna. I don't see them number 1 or 2. They might get that wild card just because, like I said, they faced some adversity, and once the goals went in, They looked like they stopped playing. So I don't know if that was just they were tired or because they've been on the road. They're about to go on a road trip, so maybe they were saving some energy because they're going on a 3-game road trip going in the West. And maybe they were saving energy, but like I said, when they were down 3-0, they looked lackadaisical, like they didn't want to be there. And it was my dad. I was with my dad, and he kept saying, "Looks like they're playing tennis." They were just going back and forth, back and forth. Yeah. So they were very lackadaisical, but we'll see what happens with TJ Oshie.
Yeah. Another thing that came actually through today, I don't know if you saw this, but I think it's official or it's close to it, but it looks like Patrick Kane is going to be signing with the Red Wings. There's been a lot of speculation about if he was going to come back, and if he does, where he's going to land. He's apparently joining the Red Wings, who are another surprise team for me. Right now, they're sitting middle of the pack, 8-6-3. To me, I expected them to kind of be in their rebuild phase. I didn't expect them to come out of it this quickly. They've had some high draft picks and things like that. They've made a couple acquisitions, but I didn't expect them to kind of be in contention already the way they are. And certainly the addition of Kane, I think is going to help that. I'm really curious to see what Kane they get, because when he joined the Rangers last year, everybody was all up in arms about he was going to be the player to put them over the hump, especially the way he reunites with Artemi Panarin from their days in Chicago. And really, Kane was, to be honest, I think he was quite invisible in the playoffs. It was a joyful moment for me as a Devils fan to beat the Rangers the way we did in 7 games. It wasn't easy by any stretch, but Kane just was kind of a no factor. And I don't know if it was because he was coming off an injury and still sort of recovering, or if he's truly just, getting up there in age, which, he is, I think. I want to say he's 35, if I'm not mistaken. And some players decline faster than others, and he could be at the end of his career. So I'm really curious what kind of Patrick Kane we hockey fans see, and how much of an impact he's going to make. Because that could be a key piece, given all of his experience for a young team like the Red Wings, if they actually do end up making the playoffs this year. So I don't know if you got any thoughts about that. Did you see that he joined them this week or today?
Yeah, I saw that. And plus, going off what you said, he's got a lot of miles on his legs. So, he could be only 35, 34, but I believe he came in when he was, 18, 19. So he's got a lot of miles on there. He got 3 Stanley Cups. So there's, long playoff runs and meaningful hockey. And hockey's not, hockey's a very tough sport. So when you're playing for, 10 plus years, that's pretty impressive.
Takes a toll on the body for sure. You're right. I mean, that's a good point. The guy, he's no spring chicken. So, but maybe they'll rest him. Maybe he truly is just a depth piece, and maybe he'll.
It could be,
used sparingly. Maybe he'll get a small amount of minutes leading up to the postseason. I don't know, but it's probably a good move by them. I give them credit. I'm pretty sure he just signed a 1-year deal, so maybe this is a twilight moment for him, trying to get one more Stanley Cup, and then maybe he does hang him up at the end of the year. But it'll be interesting to see. I did want to play something for you. I got a video clip. This is something else I wanted to sort of surprise you, because we don't often get the time to play clips and whatnot. We're obviously, we talk about this. We produce our own show. We do our own editing, but it's minimal editing. But I got a clip here and I want to play it. And it's for you and the listeners out here. Tell me if you saw this yesterday. It's related to our boy Chris Dolan, and you might know what I'm talking about. You might not, but let me see if I can play this here.
Penalties. Every player on the ice has a 10-minute misconduct, among other penalties. I have never. Garrett Rank, you might be my hero. I have never heard that from an official. Everybody on the ice. Now, Paul Maurice wants to know why.
Damn, no, I did not see that. That's pretty crazy, though.
So I saw that today, and
that's
it's
crazy.
a reference to the Panthers game yesterday against the Senators. And I've been watching hockey for 30 plus years, almost close to 35. And I can honestly say I've never seen that before. I was laughing hysterically when I saw it.
That is pretty funny.
So the Panthers were playing the Senators yesterday, and they were getting blown out, much like the game you saw. The Panthers were winning 4-0. And I guess it's interesting. The 2 Kachucks are in that game, Matthew on the Panthers, Brady on the Senators. And I guess somebody kind of bumped Bobrovsky, the Panthers goalie, in net, and they took exception to it. So, a whole bunch of commotion, some fighting, some roughing broke out. It seemed like all mayhem. And the funny thing to me is it's not like there was 1 or 2 minutes left in the third. There was almost a whole half of hockey left of a period to play. There was like 7, 8 minutes left. And I guess the referees just said, there's too many people that got involved. We don't know how to divvy this up.
Wild.
Everybody gets a 10-minute misconduct. And
yeah, that's
I
wild.
also saw there was a meme about the Panthers bench, and the players that were left were just scattered about. There was like 4 feet in between every player. It was absolutely hysterical. I was just dying laughing.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before, where the refs just say, the funniest part was really splitting my sides when he says everybody on the team has a misconduct among other penalties. I mean,
yeah, I know, that's wild.
As vague and as blanket of a statement as it gets, but I was just dying laughing.
That is really funny. Thank you for sharing that, because I did not see that.
You could be watching something for X amount of years and you always see something new. So I just thought that was damn funny. We got to make sure after the show we reach out to our boy Dolinator and see if he saw that one yesterday.
Yep.
So
one closing note that I wanted to mention on hockey. Last week, remember we were talking and we were like, why is there no hockey on Wednesday? I spoke with Chris actually, and he told me that the reason why there was no hockey is there was no arenas available in the USA. I guess they had concerts going on or events going on, and all the Canadian teams had to travel down to the USA for Thanksgiving. And there was, like I said, there was no arenas available for that last Wednesday, and that's why they had no games last Wednesday, which I thought was very interesting.
It is interesting. That makes sense. And it kind of leads into something that I can talk about for a second. It's got to be hard being the guys who make the schedules, not only in the NHL, but the NBA, Major League Baseball. I guess not necessarily baseball. It's really probably the NBA and the NHL, because those arenas are sometimes dual purpose. There's cities that have NBA teams, NHL teams, and then you got to deal with, like you said, the concerts, the Monster Jam, all these other things that they're multi-purpose venues. So it can't be easy juggling schedules, especially for the NHL and NBA. The seasons overlap each other. So you always have to deal with conflicts. The reason why I bring it up is because I can say so far this year, it seemed like we're only 25 games in, not even 20 games in. And it seems like at least the Devils have had a fair number of back-to-back games, which is always tough and to play a back-to-back at any point, but let alone they've had, I want to say, at least 3 back-to-backs. In fact, I think they started the season on a back-to-back, which is pretty unusual to open up the season, play. I think they played Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday, and they've had a couple more since then. And I'm not using it as an excuse, and that's why I said what I said, is because I know it's not easy for the schedule makers to come up with the schedules, but it definitely plays a factor, when there's no game at all on a Wednesday for whatever reason, scheduling conflicts, that's going to have to play a factor later on in the season, and it's going to end up and result in a back-to-back, which could make a difference. There's a lot of teams now who don't play, a starting goalie for 60-70% of the season. And, they'll split the time, especially on a back-to-back, they'll play their backup goalie. So, that could make an impact. It's interesting that you point that out. I'm glad we got to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I called him and he told me I was like, wow, I guess it makes sense, but crazy with all the schedule makers and all the events going on, and NBA, like you were saying, some teams share with NBA. They also do a lot of concerts. So it's just it was a very interesting stat that Chris enlightened me in, which is really cool.
Yeah. So before we turn the page and get to some NFL action, we talked about the game that's going on. I'm looking at Devils Islanders again, a rare treat for you and I. The two teams that we're a fan of are playing. There's looks like 17 and change left in the third. Devils are home, but they're down 4-2 to your boys. It's going to take, looks like, some kind of miracle for my boys to get back in this thing. I bet you they pull the goalie, and I'll, as we continue talking about other topics, I'll interject, and if we end up getting a goal. But so far, it's not looking great for my boys. You guys, on the other hand, it looks like you've had a pretty strong game.
Yeah, we just need to bounce back. We've been playing. I remember last week when we talked, we just got rid of our losing streak, and we've been kind of playing, lose one, win one, lose one, win one. So we just really need to get on a streak because, as you mentioned, Lou Lamoriello, I believe that, he's kept this core around for a very long time. I think it's going to be coming to a breaking point if we're not top 3 in our division, because like I said, it's the core is getting older. Lou Lamoriello is getting older, and we're made to win. We're not made to lose, because our team is not getting younger. It's getting older.
Yeah. Yep.
So
it'll be interesting. We'll see. I'm going to keep the game going on the side. I think you got it as well, but we can turn the page and get to some NFL like we usually do. And I kind of struggled. I wasn't sure if we were going to open with NFL, but even now trying to segue, I wasn't quite really sure where to begin. There was a lot of action, some different games this past week because of the holiday. We had 3 on Thanksgiving Day. A couple of them were good. We obviously talked about the Black Friday game, maybe some thoughts on that one. But I guess I'm just going to start with a couple of thoughts, and I'll get yours as well with what we saw last night, just because it's topical, right? It's top of mind. MNF, we always talk about it the day after when we do our show on Tuesdays. And to me, it was just one of those games again where it was a snooze fest. It was just kind of a boring game, a lot of turnovers. If you're a Vikings fan, you're not feeling good about it. I mean, you only muster up 10 points against the Bears, your bitter rival who have had a ton of problems of their own. But even if you're a Bears fan, I mean, getting Justin Fields back, it clearly makes a difference for them. There was a lot of question and concern around Badgett. Nobody, I think, thought he was the answer. They struggled with him while Fields was out. Fields, clearly, I think the impact is truly there. And I talked to a lot of Bears fans, and I think they're unsure whether or not he's even going to be on the team next year. There's been talk about trading him, and that, they're going to have these high draft picks. Maybe they already look to move on from him. I'm not really sure, because it looks like, he's one of those guys. He's young, he's mobile. It looks like he has an arm. If he can stay healthy, I think he could be part of their future. But just overall, the game was I thought really, really sloppy. And one thing I want to mention, and I want your opinion on it too, because I noticed when Dobbs came to Minnesota a few weeks ago, to me, it just seemed like everybody was anointing him as the next Brady. He had some early success. I think he had a win in the dying seconds of their first game or something. And of course, there was all this hoopla of, hey, he didn't even know the players' names. He had never met his offensive line before or seen the playbook. There was just, hang on, I think I got to interrupt this, because in the game we have. Sorry, my friend. I had to do it.
You had that locked up the whole time since we started. That's okay, though.
I did. And
you better do the same when the Islanders score. That's all I can say.
I was going to wear the jersey too, and I just didn't want to eat a whole lot of crow because we were down early. But, it's still a game. The one thing about the Devils is they don't have quit in them. Very rarely do I see them just lie down. And as a fan, I really, really appreciate that. Again, for listeners out there, we're talking about the Devils Islanders, me and Dan's 2 favorite teams who happen to be playing tonight while we're doing our show. And just after that goal, it's 4-3. But I do appreciate the Devils and how they don't seem to have any quit. Whether or not they actually tie this thing up and get a point or 2 out of it, I don't know. But there's 14 minutes left, and they still got some fight. So going back to NFL, though, was talking about Dobbs and just how people wanted to crown him, in my opinion, too early. I think a lot of people do that. And again, maybe this is me getting old. Maybe this is me not having fun. I don't know. But I like to reserve judgment, at least give the guy a couple weeks, to see what he's made of before, we just put him on this pedestal. And I think it's been 4 or 5 weeks now. He's looked good for the most part. So I think he deserves some praise for sure. But again, going back to what we saw last night, he didn't look like he could do anything right. I think he had 4 interceptions on the night. Some of them looked like tip balls, but he was just struggling out there. And for all the hoopla that was out there early on about this guy saving the Viking season and being the second coming of Brady or Manning, I think people got to walk that back a little bit and just pump the brakes on what Dobbs might be. I know he's young, and I'm not saying he's not going to be good, but people just, I think they like to jump to these conclusions, and it's like, pump the brakes a little bit if I'm a Vikings fan. So don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, let's not forget. I mean, what Dobbs was, he's a journeyman quarterback. I think he's been on 7-8 teams, and this is his third team.
I didn't
Oh
even
yeah,
know
he's
that.
been around for a long time. He played at the University of Tennessee. He was a 5th round draft pick, and
Jeez.
I believe this is his 3rd team in less than a year. He played for 7-8 teams, and he's been a journeyman. So I don't know if he's old per se in age-wise, but he's been in the league probably, like I said, about 8 years. He played at Tennessee.
Wow.
And they definitely were very happy with him. But like I said, he's been a journey quarterback for a reason. I mean, he's not a star. He's a glorified backup quarterback. I mean, You think if Kyler Murray does not start the season on the IR, if Kirk Cousins doesn't blow his Achilles, he's a glorified backup. I mean, those are the only 2 spots that he was in, because he started with the Cardinals because of Kyler Murray, and then he came to the Vikings because of Kirk Cousins. So
perfect example.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Like I didn't realize he had been in the league that long. So here's a good example. The Giants, and I want to spend a few minutes on their game. This is a good segue. Tommy DeVito, right? There's obviously a whole lot of hoopla about him, but I think there's a clear difference. I think there's no Giants fan that I know that's under any kind of delusion that DeVito is going to be the savior or that he should be the starting quarterback moving forward. He's nothing more than a fun story right now, just a little anecdote on the season. The fact that he's got his little celebration, which is pretty cool. He is a prototypical New York, New Jersey area guy, and I think that's what makes it fun. And he has had some success. Very blue collar. There's a lot of talk about his father now and his upbringing, things like that. But like I said, there's clear differences, because speaking for Giants fans, myself, we're not under any kind of delusions that he's going to be anything more than maybe a backup come next year. Whether Jones is the quarterback or if they draft someone, I don't know. But I think it's pretty clear that DeVito is not being anointed. But to your point, it just, Dobbs has been around, I guess, for so many years now. Why would any Vikings fan think that this guy's automatically going to be any different on your team? He's just purely a stopgap. And honestly, Cousins is probably another good example, I think, because I think there's still speculation whether or not he returns next year, right? Isn't his contract up this year, I think?
Yeah, his contract's up. So, I mean, I would re-sign him. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's Mr. Consistency besides his injury this year. I mean, besides that, he's going to put up 30-plus touchdowns, 3,500 plus yards, and 10 to 15 interceptions, and win you 8 to 9 games. So I mean, that's a pretty solid quarterback in my book.
Yeah, they are going to get back. It looks like Justin Jefferson
this week
has been or is going to be activated off IR. So see what Dobbs can do with that kind of weapon. Arguably number 1, number 2 receiver in the league. So if he's healthy, I'm sure he'll make an impact. But just overall, just watching that game, you wrap up a nice holiday weekend. Plenty of good games. You're looking forward to something to cap off the week on Monday Night Football, and just to get a 12-10 game. I mean, if you're not a fan of either team, it's almost not worth watching. And even if you are a fan of either team, like I said, if you're a Vikings fan, what's going on there? I don't know how you can be optimistic or excited about what you saw, because we all know that the Bears are just not a good team of their own. So to put out the performance the Vikings did, it's worrisome. I would say that they're very fortunate that they're in the division they're in. The Bears are probably already out of the conversation. I would say that Green Bay is probably close to out of the conversation, given the way that Detroit has played so far. But again, Detroit obviously lost on Thursday. That was a surprise, I think, to quite a few people. So. I didn't expect the Packers to win, but if you recall, some of our picks and our locks, I actually took a bet on the side, Green Bay getting 8 points. I think the spread was 8, and I just expected them to keep it close. and they actually won the game outright. So I won a little action, some money on the side that I did. That was just a surprise to me. But the Vikings are fortunate they're in the division they're in, because the Lions suffer a pretty unexpected loss, and that keeps them in the conversation. But if they were in any other division, they wouldn't be able to get away with the play that they're showing right now.
Yeah, exactly. They got very lucky. I mean, like you said, Justin Jefferson coming back, that's pretty solid. He's a hands down, top 1-2 receiver in the league. So depending on how healthy he is, he's definitely a game changer. And they still have Mattinson in the running back, so more throws to Addison in the wide receiver, and Jefferson is going to open up the running game. So that might help. Like I said, it might help Dobbs. It'll probably help Alexander Mattinson. It'll help TJ Hawkinson. So getting Jefferson is going to be a key component into, helping their season turn around, because I'm sure that they got to play the Lions at least one more time so that they keep winning. They can slip in as a wild card possibly. But going back to your fact and my fact, I mean, Dobbs is, like I said, a glorified backup quarterback. So he's going to get you 2 good games, then he's going to get you a shit game like he did last night. So that's just what he does. That's why he's not a star. He's a glorified backup.
Yeah. I another game I wanted to touch on is the Sunday night game. It was a game between what I'd like to say is 2 powerhouses. It was certainly close. Philly and Buffalo. I'm actually watching on one of the TVs here in the studio, the replay. It was a heck of a game. It was arguably the opposite of what we were just describing with Chicago and Minnesota, just a snooze fest. The Philly Buffalo game was exciting. It went to overtime. You got to give credit, I think, to Philly for the comeback. They were trailing for a large part of the game, but to me, their depth, their weapons, their execution, all came to light in that game. Hurts, again, you got to give him credit for the way he drove down the field in overtime after Buffalo kicked the field goal. And just to me, they're pretty clutch, I think is one of the best ways I can probably describe their team. For Buffalo, it was a good effort. Obviously, Philly looks like the best team in the league. So for them to take them to overtime, it was, I think they needed to prove to themselves that they could hang with a team like that. But it's got to be a kick in the chicklets to them, because you look at their record now and just what they've been doing the last, not even few weeks, but several weeks. They are struggling to win games. They are quickly finding themselves out of the playoff race now. I think when you looked at the start of the season, it was just kind of assumed, given the talent they have and where they've been the few years prior, they've always been in that hunt. Now it looks like they may find themselves on the outside looking in, because there's just a few weeks left of the season. And I think they're sitting at, I want to say 6-6, 500.
Yep. Yeah, they're 6-6.
So if they're not careful, it's going to get away from them real fast. So curious your thoughts. I mean, we talk about it a lot, what's wrong in Buffalo. They actually hung with the Eagles, but it just wasn't good enough. And if they don't hurry, I think things are going to go from bad to worse.
Yeah, Eagles just show who the Eagles are. I mean, look at the stretch of games. They beat Dallas 2 weeks ago. They beat the Chiefs or actually 3 weeks ago, Dallas, 2 weeks ago, the Chiefs, and this week, the Bills, and this week coming up, they play the 49ers. So the Eagles really came to play. I was watching a lot of that game, and I think they had it bringing them to overtime with a 60-yard field goal by Jake Elliott. And I was reading some articles that I believe Jason Kelce, he had a couple false starts and almost blew the game for him. And just watching that game, it really shows the Eagles are a complete team, I believe. They can give up 34 points and still win. And Hurts looks like a man on the mission. A.J. Brown, I mean, I don't know if you watched that game-winning touchdown, but Jason Kelce definitely made up for the false starts by pulling, and then he hit that guy trying to tackle Hurts at the end and then pushed him right into the end zone. So, I mean, the Eagles look like the real deal. As you said, the Bills need to, put up or shut up. Unfortunately for them, they're on a bye week this week, so they'll be able to that's going to be out of their control, hopefully, if teams lose or if they, see how it happens with the standings. But yeah, I think the Bills, people have figured out how to play Josh Allen and figured out how to play them. Like I've mentioned multiple weeks on this show, he's a hell of a quarterback, but I think people, I don't want to repeat myself, but people just defenses find out how to put a quarterback spy on, how to put pressure on him, and how to make him in a pressurized zone. And he tries to force the ball, and that's why I believe he's still leading the league in interceptions. If he was the last couple of weeks. So that's an interesting stat on Josh Allen, because he's definitely got the talent. He just I don't know what his deal is this year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm curious. I wonder if he is leading the league in interceptions. I can't help but think of, we might have made this comparison before, but a guy like Peyton Manning, who often, I think, led the league in interceptions, or, over his career, he was always up there. But, that didn't completely negate the huge success he had. It's just something that maybe he had to figure out or deal with and compensate for throughout his career. So, I think it's kind of at a crossroads for Josh Allen to figure out what kind of quarterback he can be and what he can become, because you're right. If teams have figured him out, he may go down in history. I'm not writing him off now, but again, it's sort of a crossroads to me. Does he go down in history as this quarterback with a ton of heart? I think that's not something that's up for debate. He's clearly a gamer. We talk about how he puts his body on the line. He clearly wants it, but if you can't make the adjustments and make yourself hard to play against, and utilize, again, it's not like he's without weapons. We talk about how they could have a better running game, but he's got arguably one of the best receivers in the game in Diggs. So he's got some talent around him. And I think, to your point, if teams have figured him out, he's got to look at film. He's got to get creative with his offensive coordinator and figure out ways to make yourself difficult to play against.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Moving along to some other games that I wanted to bring up. Looks like the Jets are finally done. We mentioned them last week. They decided to put Zach Wilson in the third spot and start Tim Boyle. He looked atrocious. I don't know if you saw his stats, but I mean, giving up that Hail Mary pick six at the end of the halftime, I mean, that was the pretty much the nail in the coffin for me. And I think they're just giving up on their season per se. Like I mentioned last show, their coach, Saleh, I don't think he's an alpha dog. I think he's just a dude in there just, pushing along, trying to get to the end of the season and, hoping for somebody to come in like Aaron Rodgers and maybe trying to push it around. But I mean, like we mentioned last week, Aaron Rodgers coming back with a 4-7 team, maybe even a 4-8 team. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you jeopardize the last couple of years of your career to come play for a shit team with a shit coach who doesn't really, have any balls to do anything? That's my thoughts.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And,
agreed. I did notice that the quarterback, what's his name?
Tim Boyle. Tim
Boyle. Yeah. He it seemed like he checked down a lot. I don't know if he was just naturally nervous or maybe just under fire. It seemed like he checked down a lot. As a Breece Hall fantasy owner, Hall didn't do much because the Jets offensive line is pretty putrid. So they weren't creating any space for Hall, but he did catch a lot of balls. I think he was targeted 7 times, I want to say, which is quite a bit for a back. And so it looked like Boyle was definitely checking down. So, but you're right. The Jets, it was a nice story for a little bit. And like you said, there was a lot of speculation of whether or not Rodgers comes back, but I think we can put the final chapter in that book for their 2023 season. I think it's all but over.
Yep. Another interesting stat is Dolphins are 8-0 against teams under 500 and 0-3 against teams above 500. So that is very interesting to see, when the playoffs come, if they're, put up or shut up, if they're really a good team or if they're just a good team against abysmal talent, abysmal team.
I think that's one of those stats that could really haunt a team,
Exactly.
Not only this year, but it could even last into next year. That's one of those things. If the Dolphins don't end up, it looks like they'll make the postseason unless something drastic happens. But if they don't, win a playoff game or win the Super Bowl, and they, have a bad or losing record against teams that have a winning record, it's going to come back to haunt them. So
exactly. A little
We interrupt
unnecessary, but
this
that's okay.
live telecast to bring you another New Jersey Devils goal.
You better hope they don't lose, my friend.
Sorry, I had to do it. Yeah, I might. I got a big mouth, and I know I'm asking for it by playing these the goal songs. But we do
Luckily
have
for you,
another
you
Devils
hold all the
goal.
control, so I can't do anything on my end. But still,
Yeah,
you're
I
lucky.
know. I know. Next episode, you're gonna want the keys, and I won't blame you. I'll gladly turn it over to you so you can have the fun. But yeah, for the listeners out there, we're watching Devils Islanders tonight. Watching the game live as we do this show live, and it now is 4-4 with 8 minutes left. So we got a good game going on. We'll keep our eyes on that. But yeah, going back to football, what other games caught your eye? I had a couple more I wanted to talk about.
So
What you have?
49ers, I think they're back on track to looking like one of the top-notch teams. I know I
Yeah.
mentioned when we mentioned the Eagles, they're going to be playing them this week in Philadelphia. That's going to be one hell of a game. It's really going to push to shove to see if the 49ers are the top echelon or if the Eagles are still just going to go to 11-1 and keep pushing towards it. Because, like I said, that should be a solid game. The 49ers, obviously, we know they started off to a 5-0 record, and now they're 8-3, 3-0 after their bye week.
Yeah.
And the Eagles are obviously 10-1. So that'll be a great game. But I think the 49ers finally got their stuff on track. And another game that pointed out for me is that wild NFC South. I mean, Falcons beat the Saints 24-15, and you got the Buccaneers losing 27-20. I mean, that's a weird division where it's still up for grabs, I believe. I mean, everybody besides the Panthers, I think, has a way to look for the championship crown in that division, because every team is playing great one week and then play shit the next week. You know, it's really interesting watching those teams play each other.
It is that you're right. That division is just I said it earlier that Minnesota's lucky that if they were in any other division, they wouldn't be in the competition. And I gotta take it back, because the NFC South is, I think, the only exception to that, where if the Vikings were in it, if the Vikings were in that division, they'd probably be leading the division right now.
Yeah,
that
it would be.
It's just so weird. That was an important game. You're right. The Falcons Saints. The Bucks too. They weren't playing a divisional game, but I think it was one that they needed to try to win. I'm all season long have not been. There's a couple teams that I don't get. I don't get the Colts. They're one of them. I don't get the Broncos. But they're both of those two teams are proving me wrong. But I think the Bucks really needed to win that game. They kept it close. I think Baker Mayfield went down in that game, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know. I haven't seen the injury report if he came back in that game or if he's out for any period of time. But I think what's his name? Trask came in, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he kind of struggled, didn't look so great. So that'd be interesting to keep an eye on. And we talked about how you went to the Caps game against Edmonton this past week. On New Year's Day, I will be going to Bucks Falcons. Actually, I'm sorry,
that's awesome.
Not New Year's Day. During the day, New Year's Eve, the Bucks actually play. Sunday is New Year's Eve, and it's a 1:00 game. I'll be going to Bucks Falcons. So hopefully that game has some meaning. If the season keeps going the way it does the next few weeks, that could actually end up deciding the division. So kind of excited to see that. But that division, it's that's an odd one.
Yeah, very much so. And talking about Jaguars Texans, I mean, the Jaguars look like a team to be reckoned with. They won 24-21 on the road. They got a big matchup this week against the Bengals on Monday Night Football. And here, living close to Jacksonville doesn't get a lot of primetime games. So I'm sure that's going to be one of the biggest crowds that they've had since the playoffs last year, because, like I said, everybody, when the Jaguars are good, everybody around here is a Jaguar fan. When they suck, there's nobody to be heard from. So I'm sure the whole Jacksonville, whole Northeast Florida is going to be going to that game. But they look like a good team to be reckoned with. I know before the game started, Trevor Lawrence was doubtful to play, and he actually played a pretty solid game. So they're playing really well. And we'll talk about our locks later, but obviously I did my Texans on that one, but that's okay. We'll see. And one more note I wanted to mention too was the Broncos. I mean, look at the Broncos. They're 6-5. I want to say they're on a 5-game win streak.
I think it's 5. Yeah,
I think it's 5 too. They were 1-5. Now they're 6-5. So they're figuring some stuff out. I believe their defense is really playing really well, and the Browns were down to their third string quarterback, the DTR, who we mentioned before, Dorian Thompson Robertson. I mean, he was a 5th round draft pick out of UCLA. So he's a good player, but he's, the Broncos D must have just showed up and really played well. And pretty impressive to see that them go 1-5 and now 5-0 to be 6-5. So that's very interesting, reading the games from the weekend.
For sure. I got to give the Broncos props, and maybe I'll eventually have to give the Colts props. Like I said, those are a couple teams that I just don't get. The Rams are another one. The Rams, I think that they still are just loaded with talent, but they just can't seem to string together any kind of consistency. But the Colts and Broncos, I don't personally see a whole lot of talent there. We talked early on in the season, there was a lot of hoopla about, Jerry Jeudy was taking so much heat from guys like Steve Smith, they were calling him out, the fact that he's kind of a bum almost, or lack of a better word. And same thing with the Colts. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, I think it was just announced that he's going to miss more time again for an injury. So those couple teams, I just don't see the talent, but somehow they keep stringing together wins. So I'm probably eventually going to have to just shut up and give them their credit where it's due. But to me, it's just kind of a mystery how those teams still find themselves in the mix, actually in the hunt. Cause I don't know. They surprise me, I guess. The one thing I saw today, I wanted to bring up, I don't know if you saw this. Well, obviously I'm sure you saw Frank Reich got the firing in Carolina. And I saw that he's one of 32 coaches since 1970, when there was the NFL and AFL merger between the two conferences, that have been fired either within a season or just after the first season. But just one of 32 coaches. So it's not something that happens too often. There's been some classic examples. Pete Carroll used to coach for the Jets, and he got the axe early on. You look at Urban Meyer kind of recently, who got the axe early on, guys that, last a year or even less. I'm kind of surprised, to be honest. Especially when you look at, the quarterback they brought in, a young guy in Bryce Young. They're trying to surround him with some talent, Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, but it's a natural rebuild going on in Carolina. So I'm a little surprised that they got rid of Reich, especially at this point in the season. I mean, what are you going to gain the next 4 to 5 games? I mean, are you going to, unless you immediately name a successor, which I don't think they have. I think they've named an interim right now. In fact, I actually saw that supposedly Greg Olson is trying to throw his name.
I saw that too. Yeah, I saw that also
in the ring for the potential job. Carolina favorite, and maybe that's not the worst thing. I don't know what his commitment looks like to the booth if he signed long term, but anyway, I'm surprised that they gave Reich the Yanks so early. And not, especially, I guess the timing of it surprised me more than anything else. Because again, unless you name a successor now and you want to give your new coach 5 meaningless games to end the season and build upon something, that I could understand, because you get the time in now so that next year you're positioned well, but I don't know. It just surprises me, the timing. I'm curious, what's your thoughts about that? Would you have done it too?
I would not have, because Frank Reich is a hell of a coach. He proved himself in Indianapolis, and he's a back. He was a quarterback in the NFL, and to fire him 11 games into the season, 12 games into the season with a rookie quarterback, I think that they just didn't really have any trust in him. Like, why would you even give him the job in the first place? Because the first overall pick, getting a young quarterback, what's the success rate of a coach? 1, making the playoffs, or 2, even having a 500 record or close to that. So why invest in the number 1 overall pick with Bryce Young and then invest with a coach? Because all that's really going to do is a new coach is going to come in. It's going to be a whole new system. So Bryce Young is going to be starting over again. I would at least let him finish out the season, Frank Reich, and then see what you have with the coaching staff. And if there's a really, like, if the end of the day, if it's a really big change of direction, like they don't get along with what they want to do, then yes, tell them to haul ass, but let him finish out the year and just see how he deals with adversity. That's what I think, because like I said, not to repeat myself, but a new coach is going to come in and he's going to have a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, a whole new offense, a whole new defense. And Bryce Young, being the young quarterback that he is, he's going to be the same situation that he just was in. So what does that do for Bryce Young in the long run? And in the long run?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good point. You're right. They didn't just get rid of Reich. I think they got rid of pretty much the whole staff. I think the OC went with them.
Yeah.
A couple other coaches. So yeah.
Well, you know how it is when coaches get fired, the whole staff is brand new. So, if they didn't get fired yet, they're going to get fired into the year because, head coach Greg Gross is coming in. He's not going to have Dan O'Brien, who was a coach with Frank Wright. He's going to have his own boys and his own squad, his own coaches. So it's just it doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah. We just passed the 1 hour mark of the show. I think it's a good time to take a break. We got our beer segment coming up, and then we got to scratch the surface of some college football, probably retouch on some NBA, and of course our locks of the week. But we're going to take a short time out, and we'll be back in a few.
You get the song right.
Yes, sir.
Bust smile and a couple beautiful girls tell me goodbye. Trucks break down, dogs run off, politicians lie, been fired by the boss. It takes one hand to count the things I can count on. No, there ain't much man that ain't ever let me down. Long neck, ice cold beer never broke my heart. Like diamond rings and football teams have torn this boy apart. Like a neon dream, it just don't know me. The bars in this guitar and long neck, ice cold beer never broke my heart.
We are back, and you know what that song means. It's
That's part of the show.
It is ice cold beer drinking time. Every week we do beer reviews live on the air. We pick a different beer that we've not had before. We give it a couple sips, and then we give it an honest rating. Dan, you got to keep me honest. Pretty sure. Did I go first last week?
Yeah, you did, because I had my my lemon sour. It tasted like lemonade, Chick-fil-A. So yes,
all right,
I will go first.
All right, I'm gonna actually make a note, and I'm gonna remember who went first.
Okay.
So I'm gonna actually put a nice little circle around your name. which
Yep.
shows that you are going first. I hate to interrupt the beer segment that way. It's something holy, but we've got another New Jersey Devils goal. And Dan, I hate to do this to you, but 21 seconds left in the game. Devils just get the go-ahead goal. It looks like it's 5-4, and that one stings because you guys were leading for most of the game. But looks like it's a good goal. Curtis Lazar makes it 5-4 for the good guys. Sorry, my brother. I know you're not happy. I know you're not happy with me right now, but I'll give you the controls
especially towards the beer segment, brother. Come on, man.
I know. I had to do it. Hey, you guys probably going to pull the goalie. We'll see what happens, but I apologize. I had to do it, but let's get back to the beer segment. The floor is yours. Show me what you got.
All right. So I don't think you can. Let's see. We got this new background. So we're going to take the background off so we can show the beer real quick. Hold on real quick, guys. Give me a second. So we'll go blur. All right, so you can kind of see it's got a really cool little like atlas on the front.
Yep, I can.
And it's called Aligning the Stars, Dream State Brewing. It's a Czech style lager, and it says drink fresh, drink ASAP, creek refrigerated, dream tomorrow, save tomorrow, recycle the can. And it's a Dream State Brewing, and it's actually, I've never heard of this one, but it's actually from Dream State Brewing out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and it's a Czech-style lager, 4.8%. So we're going to go ahead and try this bad boy.
4.8%. Okay, and it's a Czech-style lager, you said?
Czech-style lager, yes. Oh, man, it smells nice and strong. Oh, wow. It's going to be like really, really good hoppiness. I can already tell it's going to be a delicious beer.
That's looks like a deep... Got a little bit of head on that. This is an unusual pour for the Dauber.
It's okay. It's got a lot of hops.
Good. It still looks like a good pour. There's nothing overflowing the glass.
That smells delicious.
Is that color as deep of a amber kind of as it looks here on the screen?
No, it's more of like a Miller Lite, Bud Light color, Coors Light color.
Okay.
Yep. So let's go ahead and it smells very fruity. Wow.
Good.
Wow. That's a delicious beer, man. Holy hell. You could pound that all day long.
Really? Even with the hops? Can you taste the hops?
You can taste the hops, but only being 4.8%, you can really pound that all day long. I'm going to go ahead and give that another 8.5. I know that's a strong one, but holy hell, that's a good beer. Yeah, that's a delicious beer, my friend.
Waste no time with the rating. I like it. 8.5. That's strong.
That's a delicious beer.
So what was the name again?
The name was Aligning the Stars by Dream State Brewing.
Aligning the Stars.
No, Aligning the Stars. Yep. Got it. Really, really good.
Dream State. Awesome. Czech lager. I like it. That's good. 4.8%.
Lager, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I wonder if friend of the show, Chris Dolan's been there. We'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, definitely have to ask him. All right. Let me show you what I got today. And as I've done in the past, this is sort of an impulse. It's purely a pick based on two factors only. Number one, the can art. I've talked about how I like to just pick beers if the can art just catches my eye. It looks pretty cool, which this one kind of did. But also the style. It's we're still in those cooler winter months. So I picked an Oktoberfest and I picked another Marzen. So sticking with a couple beers that I've had the last few weeks, and I'll try to hold the can up to the can or the camera. You can see it's.
I saw that this night too at Total Wine. That's funny.
Did you?
That.
Yeah. So
that's
Left Hand Brewing.
Yep.
This would be interesting. Maybe next, doesn't have to be next show. Maybe down the road. Even though I've already tried this one, you could try it yourself and see how our ratings compare. I have no idea what to expect. Again, just Left Hand Brewing. It caught my eye. Never heard of Left Hand Brewing before, but it's an Oktoberfest. It's a Marzen, which again, last couple of weeks I've had a few Marzens and I've liked them. So I thought about giving this one a try.
Hell yeah.
This is actually brewed and canned by Left Hand Brewing Company, Longmont, Colorado. So I know you spent a little bit of time there. I don't know if you ever saw this one. My guess is it's probably some kind of microbrewery.
Mainly in Denver. I've never heard of it, but mainly in Denver is where I was.
So this is actually 6.6%. So it's got probably some kick to it, I would imagine. The description is toasted, biscuity malt, balanced by spicy, noble hops with a clean lager finish. So that's one hell of a description.
That it is.
I'm curious to see what it actually tastes like. So we'll see here. Can you see this color on camera?
Yes, I can. Definitely a Marzen color.
Yep. So
I think both our beers were extra foamy because of the cold. Look at yours. You had a lot of head too. I'm not going to give you shit on that one.
The color, like you said, it's rich. It's deep. Let me see if I can smell it. It doesn't smell too hoppy. I don't know. I guess I can probably smell the malt a little bit. Let me see if I can taste it.
All right.
It's not bad. It's
that's usually not good.
it's not bad. Let me read the can again and see what it said because there's a distinct flavor in here. I don't really taste the biscuity. The biscuit flavor is kind of what throws me from the description. You can taste the malt. It says toasted, which you can definitely tell that toastedness a little bit. Let me try another one here.
Sure.
It's not terrible by any means, but I just don't love it. The flavors, there might be a little bit too much in this, I think. They might be kind of competing with each other. It's a great beer. It's an Oktoberfest. It's a great beer on a cool night like it is tonight. I wouldn't, like yours, I wouldn't say it's a pounding beer. Like we mentioned, 6.6%. And there's just a few competing flavors in here. So it's a nice beer for an occasion. This would have been great last week on Thanksgiving, maybe have, 1-2 of them with the meal. But it's not something I would go out, probably repeat, or certainly not pound all the time. So with this one, I'm going to go and give it a 7.8.
Okay.
Not terrible, but not the best that I've reviewed so far. 7.8, I think pretty modest.
From what I've noticed is if we go above 8, that means we're going to be repeat customers. Kind of what I've noticed in both of our reviews, and under 8, I think is so.
That's sort of my benchmark. I completely agree. 8 means, like you said, repeat. As we get into the 8.5, I don't think we've had a 9 yet, but if we do, to me that means I'm floored. I love it. Not only would I buy it again, I would really recommend it to others. I would actually, as we get into the 8.5, 9, if we ever see a 10, the perfect beer, to me, that's saying I would go out of my way to actually look for it, maybe even order it online or something like that. If it was a favorite beer that it was hard to get. I hope we run into those. The nice thing about this, at least for me, I don't know how you feel, but I'm truly trying off the wall beers. I mean,
so am I.
Left-handed brewing.
They do a nitro milk scout that I've tried. Milk stout that I've tried. It's interesting. So I've heard of them.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's okay, but we gotta do it.
Yep.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, my bad. Yeah, cheers, brother.
Cheers, my man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, cheers. We haven't mentioned yet, but I'm trying out some new technology for the podcast tonight, and it's working swimmingly.
It is. So it's worth mentioning. It's worth
picked up a brand new MacBook Air 15-incher M2 chip, and going off of the camera screen, and I'm trying a new background. But yeah, it's been flawless. The new technology is wild. So very, very cool. I don't know if we've had people watch in the past where I've been a little spotty, but we figured it out. It wasn't my internet. It was the old technology of an old laptop. So, stepped up to the big game, showed the commitment to our podcast, and invested in a nice Apple MacBook. So I'm pumped about it.
You have that. I'm sure the listeners out there appreciate a nice, clean, smooth connection from you. And as your friend and co-host, I appreciate the commitment as well. It's awesome. It's
hey man,
it's a noticeable difference, at least on my end. It keeps the show moving. It's great. So
it just says I'm not going anywhere. We're here for the long haul, my friend.
That's right. We are here for the long haul. You're gonna have to pull me out of this chair. I'm not going anywhere. So
me neither, my man.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's our beer segment. Let's we got a little bit of time left before we wrap up. I think we should spend a little bit of time on college football. I'm sure you probably got some thoughts on that. We all know the big game that happened on Saturday. That was where my attention went. I didn't get a chance to check out too much of the other action. Obviously, we're talking Michigan and Ohio State. You and I, Dan, I think we're in sort of lockstep. We asked each other who we thought was going to win. I think we were both on the side of Michigan. In fact,
yes, we were.
If I can remember my own words, I think I even said it. I expected it to be a close game with Michigan just getting the edge, which really the game that I saw, it looked to be exactly that. It was pretty much close throughout. It just looked like Ohio State was a step behind or so. Just whether that's skill wise, coaching wise, they were on the road. I don't know what it was, combination of factors, but they just looked like they were a step behind Michigan. And I got to give Michigan credit. They got the W. They beat hard fought division rival. They really earned it, especially obviously, with what we talked about, some of the shenanigans going on with their coaching staff and whatnot. I know you got thoughts on that. But I think they earned a hard fought win, and they're firmly supplanted in that number 2 ranking. Again, Ohio State just seemed to make a few mistakes. I think they had the interception early on. I want to say it was first quarter or so. And that wasn't the only play, obviously, that cost them the game, but they look to me just a step or so behind. It looks like they sit at the number 6 ranking now. Fair or unfair, I'm not sure. To me, that seems probably pretty fair because there's still a couple undefeated teams that I think you have to rank ahead of them now. But I guess I'm curious your thoughts. Is that game what you expected? And I don't know, kind of closing thoughts now that game's behind us.
Yeah, exactly what I thought. Kind of going off what you said. We both were spot on. I believe they were 3-point favorites. Michigan was, and they've won 3 straight, and they're playing. It hurts me to say this, but I believe they're playing inspired for their head coach. The old scumbag himself. I think they're playing inspired. Their coach, Sharon Moore, he looks like a really up and coming coordinator. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Is he the one who cried?
Yeah, he's the one who cried. Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if this year or next year he's looking at a head coaching job. But it looks like Michigan, they came out to play. Ohio State did one more mistake than they did, and that home field advantage I think is really key in this rivalry. Even though it's going 3 straight, Michigan won 2 years ago in Michigan. They won last year in Ohio State, and then this year in Michigan. But it's pretty much what I expected. But it was a crazy, crazy rivalry week. I mean, the Georgia only won by 8 points against Georgia Tech. Florida State looked like they're not the easy team without Jordan Travis. They barely beat Florida. They were down the whole game until it came out to where Trey Benson had a nice run to put them up. And then Alabama, I mean, we've been talking about Alabama all year long. 4th and 31, Jalen Mayrow, he's just, back there popping, and then just freaking hauls it up there. 31-yard pass in the back of the end zone for a game-winning touchdown, 27-24. I mean, you look at Louisville went down to Kentucky, and, LSU with my Heisman Trophy winner, who I mentioned last week, Jaden Daniels, who's going to win the Heisman Trophy. I know we wrote it down last week, but we can highlight it, circle it, put it on the board, whatever you got to do. It's going to happen. And it was an interesting week with rivalries. I mean, I can't not talk about my boys, the Irish, finishing off the season 9-3, 56-23. That was a really good really good team, really good. I mean, really good win. We'll take it going into bowl week, but it's going to be interesting this next week because there's some really good matchups. I don't know if you've seen them, but this next week is championship week and starts off with Friday at 8:00 with Oregon and Washington. And it's a lot of disrespect because Oregon right now is a minus 9.5 point favorite against Washington, and Washington is undefeated and they already beat Oregon. So that's kind of like a slap in the face if I had to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. And then Texas plays Oklahoma State. I think Texas should take care of them. The most interesting game for me on the docket is Georgia Alabama, because we've seen in years past Alabama. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago they beat Georgia and Georgia moved to number 4. Alabama moved number 1. So if it's a close game, I could see that happening again. I could see Alabama trumping Georgia and both of them still making the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, so you think if Alabama wins, Georgia would stay in the top 4 and Alabama would move into that top 4?
Well, yeah, you got to figure because it all depends if Oregon beats Washington, because that'll put them at 1 loss. It'll put Alabama at 1 loss. So I would say if that happens, I think Alabama would move to number 1. I think number 2 would be Michigan because they're going to beat Iowa. Florida State's going to be number 3, and Georgia will be number 4. Those are my top 4.
Alabama beats Georgia,
yeah,
and Michigan beats Iowa, you think Alabama goes to 1 and Michigan stays at 2? You wouldn't put Michigan at 1?
Because you got to think of the stats, and you got to think of this is Georgia's 3rd straight season going 12-0. They haven't lost in 3 straight years with this year. So beating Georgia, that's a huge win. I mean, it's going to be a lot because Texas beat Alabama, and if Texas wins, they should be in the right above Alabama. But Alabama's been playing the last 6-7 weeks. They've been playing a really, really good schedule, and for them to beat the undefeated 3 years in a row Georgia, I think that's a really, really big win. And as long as it's close, I think Georgia will still stay top 4. If it's a blowout, then they have no reason to stay up there. But if it's like 3 points, maybe a touchdown, and like a last-minute win, I think that they'll stay number 4. Georgia will be number 1. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. So it's the selection committee, right, that's still deciding the top 4. They're going to have their work cut out for them. I think no matter what happens, there's a couple different scenarios that we just talked about, but I think either way they're going to have their work cut out for them, especially like you said, if Oregon beats Washington, and even more so if Alabama. Could you imagine if Oregon beats Washington and Alabama beats Georgia? Because then you're really going to have a bit of a logjam. You're going to have Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, Washington, those 5 teams, Texas and Florida State. I mean, do you think if Florida State takes care of Louisville, how do you move them out? This is going to be tough.
Weird because Texas is going to have a lot of clout because if you remember correctly, Texas beat Alabama in the beginning of the year in Alabama, which is a top-notch victory.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me where just the NCAA gets dicey and why I'm kind of glad next season they're 16, expanding the playoff format, because I don't completely discard it. You're right. If a team like Texas, who's already beaten a team like Alabama, and then Alabama beats, to your point, 2-time champ Georgia, now going on 3 potentially undefeated seasons, it doesn't mount for nothing. But think about it though, Texas, by way of doing nothing on their own, is automatically going to gain some clout and credit based on what Alabama does. I don't know. I mean, especially with it being 1 game, I could see if this was Major League Baseball or something where teams played a lot of series and you beat somebody multiple times where it was sort of proven. But any team, we know this, even in the NFL, NCAA, teams can get lucky. They can pull a rabbit out of their hat. And I don't know. I just don't know if I personally would move Texas up, at least into the conversation, just by Alabama beating Georgia. Taking nothing away from Alabama, I just don't know if that credit should extend all the way over to Texas. But that's just me. I don't know.
It's just going off of, the head-to-head victory, which, sometimes a lot of people, that's a big thing on head-to-head victory. So,
yeah.
going off
Like,
of there's going to be a lot of noise if that happens. But like I said, if Oregon beats Washington, if Alabama beats Georgia, Florida State wins and Michigan wins, it'll be Alabama 1, Michigan 2, Florida State 3, and Georgia 4. That's what's going to happen if that happens. But if in a perfect world, all the Washington will win, Georgia will win, Michigan will win, and Florida State will win, and the top 4 will stay the same. In a perfect world, for no nonsense, but that's not good business for us, because what are we going to talk about? Nobody likes a boring
right.
sports week.
Yeah. So I guess what are your thoughts if you had to make prediction today? Who do you think wins Georgia, Alabama? Who do you think wins Oregon, Washington?
So I think Oregon beats Washington, even though they already beat them, but that was at Washington. This is a neutral site in Las Vegas. I think the way that we spoke about Bo Nix, I think 2 weeks ago when I compared him to Drew Brees. I believe that Bo Nix is on a collision course to the Heisman. He's going to fall short of Jaden Daniels, like I've already said, but I think he's on a collision course to the Heisman. He's playing his ass off. He's going to avenge his loss to Washington on a neutral field. So I think Oregon's going to win. And I hate Alabama, but I've been on Alabama since they lost to Texas. I think Alabama beats Georgia by 3 points. 3 points is good. It's going to be a good game. I think Michigan smokes Iowa, and I think Florida State smokes Louisville. So that's going to be interesting.
I'm
What
glad
do you think?
I'm glad you differed on one of the games. I also think Oregon's going to win. I become a bit of a Bo Nix fan. I just kind of like the
That's what I'm
story
telling you.
of the
He's on a
guy.
collision course, man.
Yeah, I like the story of the guy, how he's hung around for a while. He's probably going to get a good look at the NFL. We talked about him going potentially kind of high and winning the Heisman or falling short, being second. I just like the story overall. And like you said, made a neutral site. I think it's probably their time for some vengeance. So I like Oregon as well. The other game, I'm glad you went different, just so we makes for good conversation. We can compare how we do and who's right. I think Georgia barely escapes as well. I
Are you
wouldn't
going
be shocked
Georgia,
if
huh?
Alabama wins. I expect it's going to be close, but yeah, I think Georgia is going to rise to the occasion. There's been some talk about their schedule, whether they played tough opponents this year. They've had some close calls. I know people have. Obviously, some people, if it's not the AP rankings, they weren't even one anymore. It was Ohio State who was one. So there's been a lot of question about where they should be ranked and if they've actually had as tough of a schedule. But I think they know what's at stake now. We talked a lot about the two coaches, their history together. I think Georgia is going to pull it out. You said 3 points. I'm going to say 7. I think it'll be close. I think it'll come down to the final drive. I think Georgia will pull out a touchdown, and I see them winning by 7, but I think it'll be close.
Okay. So
Yeah,
we
this is
can.
good.
This is really good. I like it. I like it.
Me too. Any other closing thoughts? I caught some action. I was kind of surprised before we go back to our picks in the NFL or anything else. You said you think Florida State handily beats Louisville, but as you mentioned before, they escaped against the Gators. It was pretty close, and they're without their starting quarterback. He's done for the year, if I'm not mistaken, right? He's not coming back.
Yeah, his ankle went the wrong way.
So
yeah.
do you still think they beat Louisville handily, even though the Gators kind of gave them a bit of a match?
Yeah, because I mean that's a rivalry game. I mean that's kids who played against kids since they were little kids. That doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, it's kids that played, against people in middle school. They played in high school. They played when they were in Pop Warner. So that's kind of what I meant by that comment. I know it didn't make sense, but that's what I was getting at. And so they're going to be at each other's throats no matter what. I mean, it could be Florida State could be 12-0. Florida will be 0-12, but that game's going to be close 50% of the time, 60% of the time, just because of the rivalry and the fans and the closeness. But
Yeah.
Louisville just lost to Kentucky, and Kentucky started off 5-1. They lost 5 straight, and now I think they're 5-7. They're going to miss a bowl game. So to lose to Louisville, I mean to beat Louisville, that's also a rivalry game. But Louisville only had one loss, and they lost to Pitt And Pitt, we know what Pitt was when Notre Dame destroyed them. And I just think Florida State with Tate Rodemaker, I mentioned him last week, how he's been in the program for 4 years. He's got a really good arm. He's decently mobile, but he knows the offense. And they're just ready to rock and roll. They got a good team. They got Keon Coleman. They got Johnny Wilson. They got Trey Benson. They got Jared Verse on the defensive side. They got a really good team, and I think they're going to handle them pretty easily. I don't see that being less than 10 points for a victory for Florida State.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Not to mention I got a lot of Florida State fans, so I like to keep them happy.
You gotta please the people, right?
Gotta please the people, my friend. We're in the people pleaser business, so we got to keep them happy. You know what I mean?
PTP, please the people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but
go ahead.
I was just gonna say one thing before we moved on to our locks and picks. I know we're coming up on an hour and a half. I don't know if you saw my text that I sent you a couple days ago about my my NBA boys. I don't know if you saw who's number 1 and number 2, top 2 in each league. Oklahoma City Thunder and my Orlando Magic. I told you from day one they were going to be surprised and they were going to make it happen this year. So that's I'm going to keep updating you, my man, and I'm very happy with my Thunder and my Magic. I'm going to claim them.
You nailed it so far. I mean, yeah, they are top 2. I'm looking at Magic. It looks like they're second. I called it the Celtics, and this might be an easy cherry pick, but based on their roster, I figured them to be leaders of the conference and go deep. And they're sitting at 13-4, man. 13-4 is best in the league, actually best in the entire NBA.
You're a game behind. I got 14-4, my friend.
Did they just finish tonight? Maybe.
I don't know. I'm on ESPN. I got 14-4, but no big deal.
Oh, I'm on NBA.com standings. Let me refresh. Maybe this is a
All
day
good.
old. Yep, there you go. Maybe it was a day old or something. 14-4. You're right. So, okay, so they're a full game up on the Timberwolves.
Yep.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting right now. You were spot on with 2 of those teams in each conference. Well done.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go to a game this year. I'd love to go to a Magic game. Wouldn't that be fun?
I'm 100% in. We got to talk to our boy Jordan Lida, see if he wants to join us. He's supposed to join us on the podcast. We'd love to have him as a guest, and we definitely want to visit him and go to a game. It's been on my bucket list for quite a while, so we need to see if we can make that happen.
Yeah, they're fun games. I don't know if I mentioned it to you before, but what you do is you just get the cheapest seat, and then you go to the baseline bar, and it's got overlooking. It's kind of similar to Amelie, where you can overlook on each corner, and you go to the baseline bar and overlook it and just hang out and drink some beers and watch some basketball and have some fun. So I think we should definitely make a weekend out of it, maybe like a Friday night or a Saturday night, but that's here nor there. But I think we should make it happen.
I'm in. Definitely got to make it happen. One quick thing is I'm looking at the standings now, the Eastern Conference, and it's been this way obviously forever, but with the NBA not having ties, it just kind of occurred to me how much parity there is and competition in the conference. I'm looking at, I know it's early, but you have 3 teams with identical records in the Magic, the Bucks, and the Sixers, all sitting at 12-5. Then you have the Knicks and the Heat with identical records at 10-7. And then the Pacers right behind them. They haven't played a game, but they're 9-7. Outside of the NBA having ties, which I compare it to a league like the NHL, the not ties, but now they have overtime losses. It creates an extra dynamic of points and jockeying for position. I'm curious if we see at the end of this season, and this isn't going to be anything new, obviously, but this is this season the closest I've ever followed it. So I can be educated and talk about it here on the show. But I'm just looking at teams that have identical records. I feel like it's going to be really, really close. Again, this is very, very early. We're a quarter way into the season, but I'm just curious what it looks like come playoff race time if we're going to be seeing 3 to 4 teams at the top with very, very similar records, a game or 2 apart, and also 3 or 4 teams around that, 7-8 seed also with similar records. If that's just kind of normal, I don't know. This is the closest I've ever paid attention to it.
It is very normal, and I don't know if you notice on the standings, but you see that there's a line after 6 and a line after 6 in both leagues. So what they do, it's kind of cool what they've done, and what they do is they do a tournament at the end of the year. So 10 would play 7, and then 8 would play 9, and then If 10
Yeah.
loses, they're out, and then that's how they get their 8 teams. So it's kind of cool how they do it. And there is a lot of parity down at the bottom just because that's going to happen. I mean, 82 games, you're going to be playing a lot of teams, but the top 3, 4, they're going to shuffle position, but below 4, there's going to be a lot of parity, a lot of, moving up, moving down, moving up, moving down, just because that's what happens with, NBA. And you'll see, just as you said, getting more versed into the season with the show going on with us, and kind of just getting more well-rounded about NBA. You'll see how everybody jockeys position. I mean, right now, I can guarantee that the Wizards and the Pistons and the Grizzlies and the Spurs and the Trailblazers, I mean, they should be pretty much down at the bottom the whole year. I mean, the only thing that might help the Grizzlies is when our boy Ja Morant comes back. We've talked about him. When he comes back, he might give them a spark because he's a hell of a player. But you'll see those teams, 2-3 wins. They're gonna probably have 15 wins on the whole year, just because that's the level of play where the bottom of the league is the bottom of the league, and then the middle of the league kind of jockeys position.
Yeah. Is the NBA the draft is a lottery system as well, right?
Yep. So it's a lottery system. It's similar to the NHL. I'm sure, as you know, it's the top, I want to say 15 teams, 14 teams, they get percentage points similar to NHL. So your number 1 seed, you get, let's say 15% chance of getting number 1 pick, and the 14 seed, 0.01% chance of getting the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep.
But
Got it.
yes, sir.
Interesting. Well, we're spot on right now. We'll be talking about it next week, see what kind of developments there are. And certainly as football season gets to the close, we've got, another month or two, but once that wraps up, I know I'll personally be diving in a lot closer to
college basketball too, UMBC
college
boys.
basketball. Exactly. I'll even be getting close to that, and hopefully we can even make a Magic game happen.
And we'll get a little UMBC hat going on too.
UMBC. Yep.
Yeah, buddy.
See if they can repeat the Magic from a couple years ago. What was that? 2017, maybe? I think
it was 17 or 18, but yeah, that was a fun time. I'm about to order us some hats. That'll be fun.
Yeah, we do. It'll be the only 4 ever purchased. Me, you, Jordan, and Ryan purchased 4 of them.
Golden Retrievers, my man.
That's right. That's right.
Oh yeah.
All right. So I think it's about that time. An hour and a half. The time flies, but we got to make sure we get our picks in this week. I started to do a little bit of research before we get into it. Let me get out the notes because it was a bit of an interesting week. Yeah, I hear you with the moan over there. It sounds like you kind of got screwed. I feel for you rather.
It's okay.
Let me recap. Going into the last week, I was 8-8. I was even on the season. I had 8 right, 8 wrong. You had me by a game, 9 right and 7 wrong. Your lock of the week was Philly, but you were giving 3.5, and they won by 3. And I actually kind of forgot for a moment what happened at the end of that game, because I knew it went to overtime and I knew Philly scored a touchdown. So I was thinking to myself, how could they have won by 3? They would have had to win by 6 or 7, whatever it was. But I realized Buffalo scored the field goal, which doesn't end the game. And then Philly goes back, and then they score the touchdown, but they don't kick the extra point, which would have saved you. You would have won by 4 instead of 3. So unfortunately, you missed that by half a point, which sucks. Yeah. Sorry, not sorry.
And then it is what it is, my man.
Yeah. And then you're upset again, another kick in the chicklets, because you had Houston getting 2 and they lost by 3. So not a good day to be Dan with the picks. You lose by basically a point and a half total between 2 games. So that puts you're still even on the year. You are 9-9. Yep. You're 9-9. I was 8-8 coming into that, and I was wrong about Cleveland. I'm looking at my notes from last week, and I think Cleveland was getting points, and I just wanted to take them outright to win. So I wasn't getting or giving anything. They didn't win, unfortunately. So I was wrong there. But I did take the Giants. I was all over that spread.
Yes, you were.
It was a close game. The Patriots had a chance to tie the game and maybe bring that to overtime, and they missed that field goal at the end. But that made the Giants win it outright, and I was getting 3 just for good measure. So I did win that. So that puts me even on the year. So both of us are sitting again at 9-9. I know last week, I think I went first. I might have stole some of your thunder. So I'm going to give you the opportunity. Do you know what you want to pick yet? Have you looked at it?
I'm looking at it right now. So let's see what we got here. All right, I'm going to go my lock first. Going to go with the Detroit Lions -4.
I like that, and that was going to be my lock as well. I like
Sorry,
it.
sir. Sorry, sir.
It's all good. You give me your reasoning in a second. I'll just tell you mine. I like Detroit coming off a loss. You know,
I mean, take words out of my mouth, my dude.
Yeah, we talked about them on Thanksgiving. I took that side bet. I thought Green Bay would keep it close. They ended up winning. That can't sit well for Dan Campbell. The Lions, they need a win. Who knows what the Vikings are going to do getting Jefferson back. They could stick around, even though they've got a couple game cushion. It's not over yet, so they can't take their foot off the gas pedal. And they're going to be on the road, so I think they're really going to have to bring everything. I like the pick. I like it. That's a good one.
I might take this other one out of your mouth too. I'm going to go my upset. I'm going to go back to my Philadelphia boys. I'm going to take them +3.
You're going Philly +3, and that's a San Fran game. Okay, I like
How
it.
you like it? You got those same numbers?
I have Philly, +3. Yep.
Okay, cool. And just my justification on that one is, I mean, I don't understand why they'd be getting 3 points at home. They're 10-1. I mean, they haven't shown any flaws besides that stupid Jets game. They haven't shown any flaws. So I really don't know why they're getting 3 points. I haven't heard of any major injuries. I mean, it's only Tuesday, obviously, but I haven't heard of any major injuries. So I don't know why they'd be getting 3 points, but I'm all over that.
I look at it as two things. Number one, sometimes, let's face it, Vegas, they often know what they're doing, what they're talking about when it comes to these odds. We say it all the time, even in games that don't make a whole lot of sense. Sometimes they nail the score and the spread dead on. So they got these guys who get paid very, very well to set these lines, because if they don't, it's Vegas and these bookies stand to lose a lot of money. So they got to be accurate. But this could be one of those times where they're just not, they're prone to mistakes, and there's crazy games out there. So this could be one where they're just wrong, but I liken it to two things. Number one, I think it is a little disrespectful to Philly because, as you said, they don't have a lot of flaws. They just played Buffalo in a close game, and Buffalo, for all the faults that they've had, they're not a slouch. They're not a team you're often going to steamroll, and Philly squeaked out a great win. But I also think not only is it disrespectful to the Eagles, I also think it's being respectful and lending credence to San Fran. I think, as you mentioned, they have come back now that they're healthy. They've added some additional players. They look like a force. So I think it's a combination of definitely a little bit of disrespect to Philly, but also some people, the odds makers, maybe just really leaning hard on San Fran. And it's hard. It's hard not to agree with them. I've said since the beginning, I thought they looked like the most complete team at the start of the season coming into this year. They've had their ups and downs, their injuries. And again, taking nothing away from Philly, I don't know. If I was a betting man, I don't know. I wouldn't put any money on this game myself. I do think these two teams probably have destiny to meet again in the conference championship. And if it comes down to that, maybe I would put a little bit of money on them. I think it's San Fran's time to win the big game. But it's going to be a heck of a matchup. I'm a little surprised. I don't know if we're in flex territory yet. Maybe it's not far enough into the season, but this game being a 4:00 game, I'm really surprised the NFL did flex it to Sunday night or Monday or whatever.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah. So, but I got you locked in for those. I was going to take Detroit myself, so let me get off of that and look at a couple others. There's a few others that stood out to me. Part of me wants to take the Falcons -2.5 because of all the reasons we talked about the Jets.
I got them at 3 if you want them at 3.
Okay, maybe. That would make me feel a little bit more comfortable just in case the Jets happen to win at 3. Actually, you've got you've got the Falcons giving 3. I would only want them to give
I got
2.5. Either way, I guess it would technically be a push. But I don't know that I'm going to take that game. There's a couple others that stand out to me. I will tell you what I think I'm going to go with. Man, this is a bit of a tough week. There's some high spreads. Like I think the Jags beat the Bengals Monday night at home, but by 8.5, they have to win by almost 9. No thanks. I mean, I know Cincinnati's without Burrow, but they've still got a lot to play for. I don't like that at all. Chiefs, Green Bay, they're on the road. Sometimes the Chiefs, you just don't know with them.
Yep, we've talked about them all year. Yeah, we just don't know about them.
Yeah, these other games. Part of me kind of likes the Bucks. If the Bucks were -3 against the Panthers, I would take it. But I'm looking at 5.5. I don't love that. So I'm going to go with a game that I talked about for 2 reasons, and I'm going to go the Colts giving 1. I said before I don't get the Colts, and I still stand by that.
I don't either.
They just seem to win. And if they're going to stay in the conversation and the race behind Jacksonville and right up there with Tennessee, I think they absolutely have to beat the Titans. I don't care that they're on the road. I don't think that the Titans are, again, one of those teams, even to me, even worse than the Colts, the Broncos, some of these other teams that I just don't get. The Titans just don't have much to play for at all. And I don't think Indy can lose to them if they're going to stay relevant throughout this back stretch. So give me the Colts as my lock, giving 1.
Yep.
And then my upset, again, I'm going to stick on this train and I'm going to go Denver getting, I have 3.5. Do you have?
I do too. Yep. 3.5 is good.
Okay. So give me 3.5. And again, I'm going with the 2 teams that I just don't understand. Denver, 5 in a row. This is a game that they need. They're not going to win the division, but with Buffalo struggling, Denver is right in the mix for a surprise playoff berth. It's going to floor me if they make the playoffs. I think I'm probably not alone in that. It's going to be a tough battle. They're on the road. I think Houston, I wouldn't be surprised if they win, but Denver's an underdog, so to speak. They're getting 3.5. So even if they keep it within a field goal, I win. So you and I got some interesting picks this week, my man. We're sitting.
That we do, sir. That we do.
And it's going to be interesting. So, closing remarks before we end the show. It's amazing we're coming up against another almost 2 hours. The time flies when you're having fun.
Not too much, man. Just another fun show. Another good stuff that we're going to look forward to this weekend. Got some really good college games, as we mentioned. Got some really good NFL games, as we mentioned, and talking a little bit of hockey. Get some love for the hockey boys out there. So that's always lovely.
100%. Sorry.
Besides your bullcrap horn, everything is okay.
You want the horn one more time?
No.
Can you probably didn't see my decorations here before we close the show? This will be the
first time I leave early before the show's over.
You see the little keychain, guys. I got the Devil Zamboni up here.
Yeah.
I got the little Stanley Cup up here. I did that just for you. So plus the goal horn. So you're a good sport, my man. I appreciate you hanging with me despite my shenanigans.
I was going to say, I thought you'd appreciate all my efforts towards being a long haul for the show with the technology
100%.
Improvement, and then you give me hell with the horn. So
you know it. It's all in good fun, my man. I love it.
I know it is.
It's a blast. We thank all of our friends, our family, our listeners out there. We hope we delivered another good show for you. If you could give us a like or a subscribe on YouTube, Overtime Sports Show, hit us up on our YouTube channel, leave us a comment. We certainly would appreciate it. We want to hear from you. We want suggestions and feedback. But we will definitely be back again next week on Tuesday with a whole nother slate of sports action to talk to you about. Until then, we wish you all a wonderful evening and a wonderful week ahead. See you in a week. We are out.
Peace.
Everybody come see the greatest show. Gather up all juggalos and roll. Come on. Everybody come see the greatest show. Gather up all juggalos and roll. Come on. Everybody come see the greatest show. Gather up all juggalos and roll. Come on. Everybody come see the greatest show. Come on. Everybody come, everybody come, everybody.